memorization of Psalm 62. We're in verse 9 today. And this is the first verse of the final section. There are 3 sections in the psalm, each with 4 verses. And so 9 through 12 are the final 4 verses of the psalm. And verse 9 says, "Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath." So just a couple observations to make for the sake of memorization is that we have these 2 phrases that start out the first 2 lines, those of low estate and those of high estate. And here we have our breath and our a delusion. And then this word but is one of the key words in the psalm. You remember back when he says, "For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress." So this word alone is the key word, and this is the, I think, 6th and final usage of the word. Again, not probably the clearest translation to catch that, but anyways, essentially those of low estate are a breath alone. Like that's all that they amount to, is what he's saying. And then this word breath is the key word of Ecclesiastes, hevel, and we see it again here at the end of the verse. So the last word of the first and last lines are both breath. And then just kind of point out these 2 here, those of low estate and those of high estate. In Hebrew, what's going on here is you actually have 2 very similar phrases. They're parallel. That say sons of men. So the sons of men are but a breath, sons of men are a delusion. But what makes it distinct is that there's 2 different words for man. So most translators have interpreted that as one, the first one meaning low and the second one meaning higher, like the lowly and exalted, are but a breath and are a delusion. And then just to continue pointing out some distinct things here in the second 2 lines, we have sort of talking about both of these groups together. In the balances, they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. So that's kind of maybe some helpful things to see how the verse is working. Now, what is he trying to say in this verse? And I think the main point is that David is, in this psalm, he's asked us to kind of join him in trusting God, right? We even had that in verse 8 where he turned his attention to the congregation, the people listening, and he says, "Trust in him at all times, O people." But what that doesn't answer for us is the question, is God the only one worth trusting? Are there other things that we can or should, that are viable options to rest in? And so in verses 9 and 10, he kind of asks those same questions. He says here, he's going to point out that people really are not worth your eternal trust. They're not the ones from whom your salvation or your strength or your hope are going to come from. And then here, like treasure or riches, money, stuff, that also is not going to provide hope or salvation for you. So he kind of identifies some other things that might be a temptation for us to rest in, and he considers them as an alternative. So what he's saying is, as a whole, he's saying, don't put your trust in mortals because they're much more frail than they think. All of their strength, all of their ability, all of their hope, all of their salvation, it's really a delusion. It's a breath. This word delusion is kind of a nod of the hat back to verse 4, when he says they take pleasure in falsehood. It's the word for a lie. So the strength and ability of humanity is fleeting and deceitful. If you put your trust in it, you will be disappointed. And that's the picture that he paints here in the second half, is kind of this scale, right? And he says that in the balances, they go up. So obviously when you put something heavy on one side of the scale, then the other side rises. So to paint a picture of these first 2 lines, he says this is what they're like. This is what the breath and the delusion look like, is they amount to nothing. They matter little. Not that he's saying that human life is insignificant, but the ability of humanity to provide hope and salvation is absolutely insignificant. And just the visual imagery here, if you remember what he's compared God to, as a rock, right, or a fortress. And I just love that those are very heavy, weighty things. And then hope in humanity means absolutely nothing. It weighs little. So your strength, ability, and security appear much greater, really, than they actually are. So God is the only true hope that you should put, that you should rest in. So I hope that this is an encouragement to you today. We're going to work on memorizing verse 9, so you can say that 25 times, and then kind of go back. Verse 8, 20 times, verse 7, 15 times, and go back and continue reviewing earlier verses. But I hope and pray that this is an encouragement to you as you kind of ask the question, is God really worthy of my trust? And if you compare his promises to the promises that human beings can make to you, there really is no comparison.